Dana, an old friend, as he mentioned, and the secretary, who has a very exciting time to be Economic Development Director here in the state of Pennsylvania. Thanks, Joy. What I was excited about this morning is how cold it is, because there's some natural gas getting used today to help that supply and demand issue that the secretary talked about. My charge, and we've probably done these about 18 times or so around the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, is to really lay the groundwork for what the meat of this morning is, which are the folks who are buying the services and the products and who are really understanding the supply chain and can bring to you some ideas about whether your business fits within this industry. If it does, how to think about taking advantage of that to take the next step. I wish I could say that when you left here today there would be a purchase order for a particular product or service. That's not the intent, but the intent is to broaden your understanding of the supply chain, to think about it in the terms that I believe it really is, which is, as the Secretary said, a game changer. So I'm going to walk through a little bit of the issues as we see them, and I think I'll use my, there we go. And give you the lay of the land, get you started on that 9 o'clock session just as soon as possible here. So shale gas development, this is not something limited. As much as it's great to see that concentric circle around Indiana County, it's a global phenomenon where technology has changed the way we can get hydrocarbons from what was thought before to be too tight a rock to be able to extract that energy. Technology allowed that to happen, not just by drilling down into that layer, but to drill down and go horizontal into that layer, and therefore, with a very small footprint on the surface, access an incredibly large amount of a certain layer of geology. We're fortunate right here in that it's not just the Marcellus. The Utica underlies the Marcellus and is responsible for additional development that's really focused right now in far western Pennsylvania, and it's what the markets in Ohio are looking at. We're operating this in a global in a global context. Shale gas development technology, starting here in the U.S., has really moved around the world quickly, and you can see the places where the resources have been assessed and where development is underway or potentially about to begin. Coming down one more step to the country, you see by no doubt the Marcellus is really the mighty shale play, the largest assessed in the country, and is also very strategically positioned. You don't see any other shale plays to the east or northeast, markets that are very heavy users of gas and have additional opportunities that we'll talk about in a minute. So it's strategically positioned. That allows consumers like you and I, as well as businesses, to get that fuel without the transportation costs that before we had to get that gas from the Rocky Mountain West or down from the Gulf Coast. Now you can get it from a few counties away at most. So very important strategic location for us. If you kind of go one step, more micro here, you're seeing the actual footprint of the Marcellus. It's 5 states. We know that geology does not know political boundaries, so as you can imagine, in every one of those 5 states, there's a different set of policies, of politics, and as Secretary Walker shared with you, an important resolution of an uncertain time in Pennsylvania is coming this week, and so I think Pennsylvania will be able to maintain a leadership position in that broader national and global shale story. So you hear about the Marcellus, and it sounds pretty homogeneous when it's first discussed. But what is very important to understand, because there are different opportunities for businesses depending on where you are in the shale play, is there's a dry gas region and a wet gas region. It's not an exact dividing line, but what you see here is basically that delineation. If you go to the east of where we are, there's a dry gas, which essentially means CH4, methane, is coming out of the ground, ready to go to market. A little bit of extra steps may need to happen, but for the most part, it's the right heat content, the right BTU, and the right construction to go into our gas lines. To the west of that dividing line is wet gas. That means there's a lot of other hydrocarbons, things that are commonly thought of as good products that have their own marketplace, like propane and butane. But then there's also products like ethane. The Secretary referred to some economic development projects underway to attract a large ethane cracking plant that really is a feedstock for the chemical industry that's because of the wet gas production regions. So that kind of helps you. I'm sure you may hear about this a little more throughout the morning, but it's important to realize it's not a homogeneous play. There's different gases in different parts. The coalition, Dana gave you a summary, and I won't spend a whole lot of additional time, but if you go to our website, marcelluscoalition.org, you'll see about 300 members throughout the entire supply chain. Seeing those members join the organization and see business development opportunities, and frankly seeing their desire to get engaged to make this really work for Pennsylvania, for this part of the country, has been one of the most exciting parts of this job. But we're in for the long haul. There will be legislative, regulatory, public relations changes throughout the next decade, I'm sure. But the industry very much is looking at putting that infrastructure in place, putting those programs in place that will last for the long haul. I want to talk a little bit about the broader economic development or economic impact. We have done now 3 years running, working on the 4th one right now, a study that is done by a third party. This is very common across various shale plays, to look at the macroeconomics. Penn State takes the data from confidentially provided by each of our member companies, puts that into a model, and then looks at what that means to the economy. The 156,000 employees through the end of last year, a little lower than what the State Department of Labor and Industry looks at, because you can make different assumptions and it's bigger or smaller, but I think by all accounts it's tens and tens of thousands of jobs that would not be here but for the activity of this industry. And also a lot of natural gas production. As of middle of last year, Pennsylvania became a net exporter of natural gas. Certainly could be the largest producing gas field in the U.S. by 2020, all other things held equal. And I think what's important too is recognizing how much benefit has come to private landowners. If you own your mineral rights, which in Pennsylvania has been very much the case in most parts of the Marcellus, in 2010 alone the number totaled $1.6 billion that went directly to those private property owners as really business partners in this development. The economics of shale gas, we are at a 10-year low in terms of gas prices. What is tough for my member companies to be getting 50% less for their product today than a year ago. That's a tough time to get through. But the certainty that we just saw come out this week from the General Assembly can certainly help with that. But there's other things that are going to continue to play on those economics. And I think if I can offer any advice about kind of looking at the economics of the industry, is recognizing that things can change on a week-to-week, month-to-month, year-to-year basis. But in the long term, this is an industry that makes really big investments and then is there for a long time to see the fruits of those investments. And so, that's kind of the economics of shale gas. We could spend a whole morning just on that energy economics. But what is a low gas price environment? What's difficult maybe for the gas industry right now in that is the flip side of that is incredibly opportunity building for consumers and for other parts of the supply chain. So I know the bills to consumers, easily in that $700 savings per year. Some of those numbers were done before we were down below $3 per MBTU. But there's also transportation fueling opportunities. So the gasoline equivalent of natural gas at $1.40 when we're paying up over $3 for gasoline, that makes a big difference, and the economics start to work to convert those fleets for individual businesses to think about converting their own trucks and transportation to natural gas. Electricity generation with very low natural gas prices and the air quality benefits that come from burning natural gas, you're in a situation where we can see natural gas not as a supplement, not as a peak fuel for electricity generation, but as more of a base load opportunity. Combined heat and power applications, certainly feedstocks for the chemical industry, and a resurgence of chemical industry jobs onshore, and then the utilization of those various streams in that wet gas play each have a marketplace that it by itself can create new job creation opportunities. The Marcellus multiplier, you'll hear a lot more about this today, but if you kind of think about every well pad being about a $5 million construction project, maybe a little higher than that, if you look up at 11 o'clock there and go clockwise around that circle, you see all the steps in the production, and you'll hear more about every one of those throughout the course of the morning. But each one of those has a variety of products and services that need to get to that well site, and for the midstream, for the pipeline and midstream gathering line development, there's a whole lot of other businesses and services that come to play. So listen to see maybe where you fit in that, and if there's a potential for retooling or refocusing your company's offerings to be part of the supply chain. This is another way to think about it. The oil and gas industry, the center circle there, has a lot of contractors, suppliers, and services. That's that second ring. Think about where your product or service sells into this industry. I get comments sometimes that the purchasing people at this particular oil and gas company aren't returning my call. And we talk further about what the product or service is. That's not the customer. The customer may be a supplier of that oil and gas company. So a lot of what's being purchased throughout that $5 million construction project doesn't necessarily come right out of the oil and gas company. It may come out of one of the suppliers or even one of the supplier's suppliers. So listen for that this morning as well. Leaving here today, next steps are going to be very important to think about. You may get some additional ideas as how to frame your product or service. You may think about who you maybe should contact that you hadn't thought about before for that opportunity. But one thing that we're very cognizant of is how do we continue to give exposure to the Pennsylvania-based companies who want to work in this industry. And so we'll be launching in March Marcellus on Main Street, and it's a way for businesses across the supply chain, from restaurants and hardware stores to service yards and machine shops. And it's a very exciting new tool that you'll be seeing launched in early March. And it's open to anybody, any company who wants to be involved. And Joy Ruff, who's here on our staff, has really been our project manager and has done an excellent job on getting this tool off the ground. This is a little preview into what we will be launching. To close, I want to share with you the guiding principles that we put together almost 2 years ago, about a year and a half ago now, and has really led how the industry's looked at the policies, at the priorities, at the work that we do, including many of those developments that have come out of House Bill 1950 that Secretary Walker talked about. Each one of these things are important to all of us as Pennsylvanians. And it's really been a good organizing principle for the way that the industry has faced quite a few new challenges, and also looked at the opportunities here to get it right the first time. And with that, I will conclude my presentation, so you have lots of time to get into the first panel discussion scheduled for 9 o'clock. Thank you very much.